if you have something that you're working on or you have stirring in the back of your mind and you just can't let go of it, it's probably something that God wants you to do. So follow through with it. I had an idea once called Create Before You Consume, which is just a phrase, but somebody else published it. And that pissed me off. I felt like the pressure of God going, hey, if you don't follow through with this soon, this is going to go to somebody else.
So much learning. I think actually that's where a lot of people quit, because even so many people have a story of like, well, this business failed or this didn't work, but every failure is a learning process, and it always takes longer than you think it's going to take, right? There's no project that ever goes how you think it's going to go.
Hey, so welcome to the Mobile Podcast Trailer. My name is Jesse, and I am the owner of the Mobile Podcast Trailer. And it's not my intent to always be on camera, but there are going to be moments where that happens. And that's why you're listening or watching the Mobile Podcast Trailer podcast. I guess that works, right? Mm-hmm. And I am here with who I would say is my best friend. Now, I know he has other best friends, but he is my best friend. I've known Matt Redder for, well, it feels like all of my life, but it's probably about 1992 when he and I first met, roughly.
Right.
We were both kids, he being a little bit older than me, and at the time, it felt much older. But that is not the case. He is not that much older than me, because we're grown up now. And when he moved back from Colorado, I desperately asked him to meet every week with me because I needed a friend. And so for years, we've been meeting, hanging out, and discussing business, life, and honestly, like the struggles of just being a grown-up, being a husband, being a father, and we just kind of were there for each other, and it's been life-changing for me. I don't know if that's the case for him, but it's certainly that way for me.
Yeah, well, I think the journey has been such a good one, and I feel like our weekly rhythm has been really powerful. When I think about friends, I actually think more in categories of brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that like even you said, best, second best, top 10. Like, I don't think in those categories. I just think in terms of brothers. And I think in terms of my own life, without a table full of brothers that I can count on, I'm not getting anywhere. So that's kind of how I think about it. And, I love that we get to share a table together on a very normal cadence and normal basis. And so monumentally important. You and I talk about that frequently, but even in so anyway, I just want to respond to that. Like, I think about it that way. Yeah. So within the brotherhood, I just think men, and I think it's important for women too, but I think men especially got to have guys at your table that you trust implicitly, that if you need help, we can help each other. If you're having a bad day, you're able to say like, hey, my day's not going well.
Yeah.
You can call if you're in a pinch. And again, like there's, we suspend judgments and we just show up and try to help one another. And I think you and I have both been able to do that for each other over the years, especially in this time over the past 4 or 5 years. And even so much as like, I don't remember when it was, but you were tiling a room in your house and I had some time and I was able to come over and help you work on that. And like,
yeah,
it's just like,
by the way, there's going to be another moment where I'm going to need you.
Some more tiling, yeah. But that has all then, what would you say, metamorphosed into, our businesses and our work. And now, we're sitting in this mobile trailer, which was just a seed of an idea for a little while for you. But now you're here. You have merch. I mean, that's crazy. You have Mobile Podcast merch.
I do. Not that it really takes a whole lot to put your logo on a trailer and on shirts. Actually, you know what?
It does feel good.
Let's talk about that for a second, because it does actually take a lot. Because I had a logo, and the concept of the logo remains the same, but when I sent it over to have the shirts made, the graphic designer guy, hopped on the phone with me and was like, "Hey, did you know that like your vertical lines are squiggly?" And I was like, "No, totally thought that when I made that in Photoshop that they were straight lines." And he was like, "No."
Wow.
And he like zoomed in really close on it.
Yeah,
and he was like, it's all squiggly. And I was like, "Oh, well, how much will it cost me to have you fix that?"
Yeah.
And so I think like, $87 later, I'm now vertical lines. They're straight vertical lines.
But I think that's part of I would assume you're going to have other entrepreneurs participate in this mobile podcast trailer. Other people who are creatively minded and open-minded and malleable enough to think bigger picture and think like, oh yeah, I could do a mobile podcast. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got to be somewhat creative, and you got to be willing to trust the process. And it actually reminds me a lot of doing like home remodeling projects, which in home remodeling, if you don't know this, but it always takes longer than you think it's going to take. Right. There's no project that ever goes how you think it's going to go, because you open up a wall and you find whatever you find.
Right.
An extra stud, no studs, insulation, a water pipe, or
cardboard.
You saw through an electrical line. Like there's just so many things that could happen. So
you hit a water line. All of a sudden you have a flood.
We've done all these things. So you have to be willing to be flexible and to I use that word malleable. I think it's a good one. You got to be willing to be pounded into the shape that you need to be in. And that takes even today, right? Like no one's going to see this, but this trailer is not in the spot that we thought it was going to be in.
Right.
We had to pivot and make it work a different way, and it's working fine. But if you're too rigid, like it's not going to work.
Yeah. Before owning this trailer, I never drove a trailer. And before doing all of this, I'd never done it before. In fact, this podcast is an effort for me to learn how to actually podcast, because I've never actually done any of this. Like, I've been a content creator for 10 years, and that's pretty much it. Like, I've been creating content and producing content for small businesses, mainly construction companies, and managing their YouTube channels, but I don't manage the podcast side of things. So to step into this mobile podcast trailer venture is kind of indicative of how I've always lived my life, because I didn't know how to play bass in a band until the day before I was in a band, which was also the day that I got the bass. So I got the bass, learned songs, had practice the next day. So that's kind of how I've always done things.
So much learning. I think actually that's where a lot of people quit, because you have to, I heard someone else say this, but she was being interviewed. She's an entrepreneur, business owner, and she just said, you have to be a little delusional to be an entrepreneur. And I think that that's very true, because you have to be willing to keep really short accounts of things that you miss on. And even I think you have to recategorize, and you have to reframe what failure is or success is, because even so many people have a story of like, well, this business failed or this didn't work, but every failure is a learning process. And if you do it right, you're stepping stones, those are stepping stones to something that will be successful.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I've got a question that's kind of spawns from that part of the conversation. Do you think that people just don't take enough swings? That they just count like failure as like, oh well, I failed. Like they didn't try hard enough times. Because like, I've had this trailer for this just being the example that we're staying on, but like I've had this trailer for a couple months now, and I still haven't had, a true paying client in the trailer that's like specific to the trailer. But I've had all of these kind of, like, we'll call them speed bumps along the way that like, things that like in some way have derailed me a couple of times.
yeah.
And like today, I was just so determined to win, so determined to have this conversation, not because I knew that the conversation was going to be worthwhile, but because I just needed I needed to see it done.
Yep. You wanted to win.
Yeah. And like, I got here and I pulled the generator out because I'm going to throw it at the front of my truck. And so it gets some distance so that you don't hear it in the audio. But I got it out and went to turn it on, and it was in the on switch. And I was like, oh no.
Yep.
And I couldn't power it up. And then, because of, I would say, relentless effort, we just wouldn't let it go. Right. And that's kind of like this idea of the mobile podcast trailer just wouldn't go away.
Yeah.
And that's, and I don't know, maybe this can help encourage somebody. I don't know. But like, there has to be, if you have something that you're working on or you have stirring in the back of your mind and you just can't let go of it, it's probably something that God wants you to do. So follow through with it. And, we talked about it on your podcast, Passing the Pulpit, but like, I had an idea once called Create Before You Consume, which is just a phrase, but somebody else published it, and that pissed me off. Marie Forleo, maybe someday you can hang out with me in this trailer. Or another trailer that I have. I don't know. We'll see. But
well, she wrote the book, Everything is Figure Outable.
Right.
So she would be an interesting, as far as business, marketing, entrepreneurship, she'd be an interesting one to have.
She would be. But the thing is that like, even though theoretically she made that phrase, create before you consume, popular, and really it's just a group of words together that, came into my brain one day, before her. I'll just let that be known. It's still something that haunts me. And so when I was trying to figure out how to do this, I basically felt like kind of under the gun of what God was putting on my heart. Like I felt like the pressure of God going, hey, if you don't follow through with this soon, this is going to go to somebody else, which I fully believe. And we've talked about that before. If there's something within you, because also like we're dads, we're husbands, and I would say that it's also pretty easy for us to not dream because we're so focused on providing. Whether your wife works or not, she's working no matter what, whether it's working in the home and not being paid for it, or working outside of the home and likely being underpaid drastically. And right now, I think that for the most part, a lot of us are all just underpaid. Do you still dream?
Right. That's a pointed question. And I would say minimally, because I actually think that creativity needs a lot of margin. Like creativity and margin they need each other.
Do you seem
So what I
mean
mean by that was
margin as in margin in effort or time, or are they all the same?
time. I would say time. Like margin in my mind is like energy, time, freedom to dream and be creative. And so you kind of just listed off a bunch of the different responsibilities that you and I and many others have: family, work, bills, kids' concerts, sporting events. I mean, so many different things. So all of those things take up space on a calendar, and they all minimize whatever extra margin you might have. So I think that that's a piece of it, is like, it's the velocity of life is so much that it kind of consumes the available margin, and therefore really sucks the creativity. So, and I think those things go hand in hand. Like, you really have to fight for whatever margin you might have. And then I think if you can fight for those spaces, then you can go to those spaces and you can try to think creatively, and you can dream, and you can try to chart out and plan out different things. And, but those are disciplines that are, frankly, for everybody, very difficult to maintain. So there's two parts, building the discipline first of all, but then maintaining the discipline. So, super difficult for people to do.
Do you think too, like context switching is like something that I struggle with? So like getting into the creative is hard. Like, that's one of the reasons why I think I built this, was because I wanted to make it as simple and frictionless as possible for my clients, who often will look and go, I know I need to do that, but I don't have, and honestly, my target market is, like 5 million and above business owners that can spend the money to do this, but they don't want to spend the money to buy all of the equipment. They would rather spend their effort talking rather than spending their effort in putting everything together inside of their office that may or may not work to their benefit. Do you think that like you are probably the best artist I know, like, personally?
That's nice. That to me means you need to meet more artists.
Well, I guess in the medium of like drawing and painting, the real life feel of your art is legit. Like, I remember the extremely muscular arm with the baby at growing up, like those types of and maybe your brother's a close second, but like and I remember his like dot monkey drawing, which is insane too. But like, do you think too, like, it's just hard for us to just switch out of like dad mode, or provider mode? Like, that's a really hard thing for me, because like, I keep on relating it to where we're sitting, but like, this is a way for me to provide for my family. It just helps fuel my creativity. And I don't really feel like I'm a super creative person, to be honest with you. I often feel like I'm lacking quite a bit. But like, would you say that the context switch is kind of the bigger piece of the puzzle?
I think they're probably, again, really related. We're probably talking about a very similar thing. So, but again, if in your day to day you're entering into, let's just say 3 different contexts. In one context, I'm trying to be a attentive father. In another context, I'm trying to be an attentive husband. And then another one, I'm trying to be attentive to my work, my 9-to-5 job, let's say. So yeah, those are 3 different ones right there. And you're right, it's really hard to switch back and forth. But again, each one of those things can take up a large chunk of your time.
Right.
So we're kind of talking about the same thing, like context, margin, time, calendar. But I do hear what you're saying in the sense of, like, maybe if we drilled in and said, is it difficult to jump from being let's just say being a husband, father, provider, different to jump from that context over to, and I'm also a very creative, let's say, painter.
Right.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's super difficult. And it's funny you're bringing this up because I was just talking to one of the baristas in the coffee house who's a painter. And he's younger, so, you know, he doesn't have any of the other responsibilities going on. He's still e-school.
Lucky guy.
So he's showing me a portfolio full of paintings, right? Full of paintings. And they're beautiful, they're colorful, they're lively. It's awesome. Beautiful work, like super cool. Super fun to talk to. But then he asked me, like, oh, do you still paint? And I'm going, well, I maybe finish a piece once to twice a year at this point. So then he was asking me kind of a similar thing of like, oh, well, what, you know, how does that work or what's going on there? And I just told him, I said, honestly, again, you have to be able to have the spaces and the margin, the time and the energy available to enter into these
Right.
this creative space, this productive space, whatever. And it's just a very difficult place to get to at this point of life. So, and I think in other parts of my life, I get to be creative. So it's not like, I don't feel like I'm like, you know, the creative part of my soul is dying. I don't feel that way. I have in the past, but I don't feel that way now. So that helps. But yeah, the context switching is obviously difficult for people. I think the margin is the bigger thing. We just do not have margin. We don't live with it. And so that kills creativity. Like full stop, period, end of thought. If you do not have margin, you're going to have a really hard time being creative.
Yeah. Well, and margin can be a lot of different things.
Sure.
In like what you've mentioned, where like, let's just say the margin of money, which I think is a pretty accurate thing, right? Mm-hmm. Most people nowadays, you know, they want to be a content creator because they see that you can, you know, do UGC, user generated content, and you could sell, you know, a product, or you could just send a video to the company and they'll pay me, you know, $200. And, you know, that in it, you know, I guess if you could produce decent enough content to put yourself in front of a situation that, like, you know, you're trying to sell a backpack or a vitamin, you all of a sudden, you know, you could leverage that quite a bit, but you have to have the time to do it. A lot of people will say, when you don't have money, you have time, which I actually think is probably pretty inaccurate, because when you don't have money, you're probably working so hard to earn money that you just feel like you're stuck. You know, like I recently saw a video that talked about how Walmart will pay their people just under that poverty line, where the employees have to have the, you know, financial help of the government no matter what. But then when they get paid and they don't have enough money, the government then, you know, will subsidize their food or their all of their things, which then the employee goes back to Walmart and spends the money that, so it's like this vicious cycle of like, I don't have enough, so I have to have assistance, and then that assistance is also going back to the company that is paying me so little that I have to be on the assistance, which is a fascinating
Yeah.
cycle, but it's 100% true. Like, you look at everybody in those situations, a lot of them are working part-time. So
Right.
ultimately they're not making enough money. And if so, they have to go and they have to drive for Uber or Uber Eats or Lyft or whatever the case may be. They have maybe second or third jobs, like,
Well, I want to jump in here because this is something that's coming up in I feel like it's coming up in every conversation I'm a part of, but this idea of, we no longer live in a space where you can really make it work with one income. That's like a very general statement, to say you can't make it work with one income.
right.
So, but I think there's so much data to back that up. And even what you're just saying right now, it's just so difficult for even a family or, even a young person to figure things out with one income.
Yeah.
And you have to get creative again. Like in your case, you've chosen an entrepreneurial avenue. So, a person might argue and go, well, that's one income, but it's not. You have multiple clients. You have to keep multiple clients. And actually a point of reference for all this that is very interesting that I think a lot of people will resonate with is, for instance, the show Stranger Things is really popular right now, right?
Yes.
So Stranger Things is really popular. And that show is based in the 80s. And if you notice in that show, you'll notice something really interesting, which is that Joyce Byers, the character played by Winona Ryder, she's a single mom and she has 2 boys, and she works at Radio Shack. And in the show, she is, again, I'll say this again, single mom raising 2 boys. She working in Radio Shack, and she has a house. Now, again, The show doesn't go into detail about like, how did she get the house? What's her mortgage? Whatever. It doesn't really matter. My point, what I'm trying to say is that show highlights something that used to be the case, which is that you could do it that way.
Right.
You could work at Radio Shack and you could have X, Y, or Z things. And I'm just going to say again, bluntly, like, I just don't everybody I know, married, unmarried, whatever, has to get really creative figuring out their income.
Right.
So if you want to dovetail this onto the conversation we're kind of having about creativity, now you live in a world where the margin is being just sucked out of, whatever spaces we're living in.
Right.
So then we're getting less, we're forced to be less and less creative. We have less and less margin. It's kind of a banging your head against the wall because fundamentally at the end of the day, like, I don't want to live in a world that's less creative.
Right.
I want to live in a world where there's more, young people buying paints and making beautiful, colorful paintings that they're showing off because they love it so much. Like that's what I want to see. But yeah, again, it when you were talking, it made me wonder, like, I wonder how many cycles we're in that are just like what you're saying.
Yeah.
Where it's, we're people are kind of just getting by, and it's just enough, and it's just really difficult.
Well, I'm reminded of when I worked for GoDaddy.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I worked there, prior to working for GoDaddy, I was unemployed for like 6 months. And so I was just, even though I didn't want to work for GoDaddy, I was just so overjoyed to have the ability to provide. Mm-hmm. And, the same day that I got the job at GoDaddy, we also signed a lease on a house in Ahwatukee, and my in-laws co-signed on it because obviously we didn't have an income. Early on in our marriage, my wife and I chose for her to be home with our kids, and that was her role and the most important aspect for our family. And I stick by that. You know, so we are in theory, a one income family. But when I started working for GoDaddy, I was so stoked because I was going to get a bonus check. Which, by the way, a bonus is just another word for we can choose to pay you extra. And also, it's different. Bonus and commission are two separate things. Because in a bonus, they can take it away from you. So if they listen to one of your phone calls and they determine that you sold something that was unnecessary, they could say, no, sorry, and we'll take that bonus back. If the customer returns the product, even though it's a digital product, if they return it, you'll get charged back on that. But all of that to be said, we also had minimums. So we had these goals that we had to hit for our daily, our daily numbers. And so, let's just say when I first started, it was $1,000 of sales a day. You would get a bonus. So if of that $1,000, if you sold $1,000, let's just call it 10%, you earned $100 extra for your day's work. So which is, dope. If you're
a great carrot.
If you're selling and you're good at selling, yeah. So we would do it, and I finally got to a place where I was doing that pretty consistently, and then they moved the carrot, and they said, "Oh, well, now bonus tier is $1,500." And during my 3 years of working there, they changed our bonus structure 6 times. So basically every 6 months.
Yep.
And
so that's going to be, if people are listening, they're going to go like, oh yeah, that happened to me too.
Correct.
Because what we're talking about is just this is how things go. It's not even, and we can bemoan it all day long, but it is what it is. If you're going to,
but if you look at kind of what you're referencing in reference to Stranger Things, which I've never seen the show, but like the 80s, that we're just kicking we're just moving the carrot. Further and further, like when we were kids, I remember in Ahwatukee looking at all the big houses and going, man, I can't wait until I make 6 figures a year. I make 6 figures and feel poor.
Right.
And honestly, like when we first got married, I was making, $1,600 a month, maybe $2,000. And I thought I was doing good, and with a, $700 mortgage, thinking that I was doing good. But like,
what was one of your first big boy purchases? Do you remember? Like when you and your wife went out and you were like, let's buy this thing.
Well, our house was, we closed on our house 2 weeks before we were married. And I moved into it, and then after we got married, she moved in. But I would say, as a married couple, our first big purchase was our, I believe it was an Ashley Furniture, microfiber kind of corduroy couch. It was like $1,100, and we really shouldn't have spent that money, but we had some money saved.
Yeah.
So we paid cash for it, but
I was just curious.
Realistically, we shouldn't have bought them, but we still dream of that couch.
Yeah.
But the houses that we've lived in now, living in Central Phoenix, would not be able to house that couch.
Oh, yeah. It was a big one?
Yeah, it was huge. So the living space, and we had, even though we had like a 1,400 or 1,500 square foot house in Laveen, we had a very big living space that allowed for a large couch. And same with Ahwatukee, we had the same. We brought that couch to Ahwatukee, but then when we moved to Central Phoenix, our living room spaces got smaller.
Yep.
Our mortgages went up, but our living space got smaller as far as living room
Yep.
space.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I was just wondering. It's fun to think back about like that first purchase. We went out and bought a Nintendo Wii. I don't know why, but it was like I got a job. We knew a paycheck was coming, and we just went down and got a Wii and bought Super Mario Brothers. And I'll never forget my wife. We opened up the game, and my wife goes, "Yoshi." I was like, "Oh gosh." Oh, that's fine. But it was fun. It was fun to like for a minute, do something kind of crazy. And I guess I just asked because it's fun to think about that. And I totally agree with you about the financial piece. You could never have told me 10, even 15 years ago. And this is going to make us sound like old men, right? Like when I was a boy, I was or whatever. But the thing is like, you could never have told me 10, 15 years ago that it would take the amount of income that it takes right now to live.
yes.
I would say modestly, I'm definitely not sitting with you like overstretched and overspent in one way, shape, or form or another. I mean, I could go down the list, doesn't really matter. But the point being, like, even to live modestly, the amount of income, the amount of money that needs to be made every day that you and I know in our brains, right? Like,
Yep.
I know, like, this is the nut I got to crack every day. And if I take a day off or I take a few days off, like, then that nut just gets bigger and it just, it's tough.
Well, like so the way that I do life right now, I basically work 4 days a week and have off 3 days a week because we do our homeschool co-op Wednesdays, and then I don't work on Saturdays and Sundays unless I can break away for a few moments,
Right.
And send emails or respond to messages or make sure that
Right.
the videos that we need to get up. But like, that's one of the reasons why I've delegated to you, like, the things that I don't like to do.
Right.
And, one of the things too, I think we've gotten to a point where, like, I remember, like, as a kid, we've mentioned it already, but like, I couldn't wait to make 6 figures.
Right.
And now I'm like, golly, like, what's the number that I have to hit to feel comfort? And is it being an entrepreneur? Cause like, I really struggle with that word. But like, I don't want to work for somebody else. I do like working for myself. But working for myself also means like having clients and trying to manage my client, relationships within the confines of my 4-day-a-week situation. Well, how do I fit work into 4 days a week? Well, there's lots of different things that I have to do. I have you, I have Hunter.
Yeah, you worked really hard this past year to delegate.
Yeah.
But also I think you got to be careful too, not to, I'm not gonna say over glamorize, but because you do jump in and work, in a lot of those off times because you have to.
Right.
And so it's not.
I don't think we're ever off.
Right. Yeah. That's another piece of some of this type of lifestyle of like, that I think, some people just don't want, but you're right. You can't, if a client has a problem or, actually this last weekend we had videos that did some wonky things, let's just say.
Yeah.
And so we talked about it and tried to get it figured out, but yeah, that's what's going to come up. And again, I think that's where you have to be flexible and malleable. And again, if you want a really rigid schedule and you don't want any surprises, you don't want any shakeups, or you don't want to pivot, you don't like to do that, don't be an entrepreneur for sure.
No.
And it goes back to like what I said, like this other woman I was listening to said, well, you got to be a little delusional.
Right.
And you kind of do, because you have to want different things. And
Well,
That's okay.
I've heard it said like you kind of have to be the idiot in the room. You know, like
Yeah, you have to be foolish enough to think it could actually work.
right,
Right.
right. And you know, it's funny because even though this, you know, trailer still has not actually brought in any money, I've had a lot of conversations, mainly with people out of state. Which, by the way, Brady Wood says hello. Brady was like, "Dude, how'd you come up with that idea?"
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know if people are asking that just out of like, because in my brain, it's just not, it's not that creative. Like, I just felt the need to do it, and that was it. Like,
Well,
that I didn't need to go further than I just need to do this to really answer the question.
Well, I kind of feel like as an external person watching it play out, you know, you had a couple of clients doing podcasts, and I think somewhere in there you at some point said like, you know, it'd be really cool if there was like everybody wants to, you're saying everybody wants to do a podcast, and you're right. You know, so many people are doing them. But what if the studio could come to you because you saw that one of your clients in particular was having that specific pain point, was like this studio, you know, where were they supposed to set up and who was supposed to run it? And what about this? What about that? So yeah, you got there kind of organically, you know, that's my perspective externally, but you got there organically. But then it really was, it makes you wonder like how many people have a creative little unction or something,
Right.
Like, oh, what if? But then that's where it dies.
Right.
And I think that's very normal. Like there's no shade on that. Like it's not a bad thing necessarily. But for you in this particular instance, you let it grow. You let it kind of grow up in your mind, and you gave it wings, and now here it is.
Yeah.
And that is the difference. You know, you're asking, I think earlier, where do people falter, or where do we kind of gas out on this stuff, or fall or fail? And I think part of it is just like you gave it life, you let it breathe, and maybe like in the Frankenstein story, right? You brought the thing to life, and now it's alive, and now we'll see what happens.
And now I actually got to do something about it. And one of the things that so I bring this notepad with me to church. It's a Remarkable tablet. And one of the time, you know, in the past few weeks when we were at church, I wrote, invite, host, offer. Invite somebody to the space, host a podcast with them, and then if the opportunity presents itself, say, hey, you know, this is available for you to host your own podcast in it. Because like this can be a space that I host people too. You know, part of the dream is that I can pull up to any business, throw the generator outside, and get it cooking once I take care of the battery issue.
That's right.
But I can go to a business owner and be like, I find your business really interesting. Can we have a conversation about it? And then see if that leads to another opportunity where, like, I'm reminded, and this is completely like, I don't know necessarily how to do this, but like SB Mowing from Wichita, I believe they're in Wichita. They just go to people's houses and go, hey, I see your yard's really overgrown.
Right.
Can I, you know, mow your lawn for free? And because of that, through the generous act that they're doing, he's able to generate a lot of views, which then in turn provides for him as he's providing a free service to people, which I think is cool. And I'm pretty sure he's earning lots and lots of money. But
also one of the best social media accounts you're ever going to see. It's so wholesome.
Great storytelling.
He just shows up and takes care of people's lives. It's awesome.
Yeah. And I saw another guy doing the same thing where he's kind of like a handyman, and he'll drive around and he'll see people's fences in need of repair, and he'll go and get the material and be like, hey, can I, repair your fence? And he'll repair the whole fence for free, which is super rad. But he's also, getting millions of views and stuff. And so like when you see those kinds of things, like there are people that go, well, I could do that. And it's like, yeah, you could, but do you have the margin? A lot of people will say bandwidth within that like thought process, but like
I think there's this.
do you have the margin of time to do it? Because a lot of people go, well, he just put his phone up and time-lapsed himself. Yeah, but then he went and edited all of that, and he did the voiceover. A lot of people tend to think that creating content is like this easy process. It's an easy button, and it's just really not. It's like people who say that being an Airbnb host is easy.
Or being a Turo host. None of this is. And
no.
And again, we should do a different podcast about this, but I think the concept of passive income is even a bit of a misnomer. I mean,
it's a lie.
The truly passive income is very minimal. And a lot of what people call passive income is not passive. I mean, you got to build that thing. You got to nurture that thing. You got to
look at the Arizona market right now as far as housing goes. So we had all these Airbnb people going, oh, look at me making all this money. I'm making $90,000 a year on each house that I have. And now they can't get people in these houses because they're charging exuberant amount. They're doing $25 nights, but then they're charging a $900 cleaning fee. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but nonetheless, they're overcharging for cleaning. There's a massive influx and return to people going, I'm going to go stay at a hotel.
And there's new cool things available, like house swap. Have people swap houses for no money exchanged.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and there's also new cool things like laws that where cities
can't get short-term
rentals. And so I think that there's a space inside of Scottsdale there where there were a lot of Airbnbs, and I think that they've changed it. I could be wrong, but I've heard about this change, and I just find it funny because when people built these houses, the intent was not for them to be short-term vacation homes. They were meant to either be a rental property long-term or a primary residence for people. But I know we need to land the plane. I did not ask any questions.
I think we had some good combo. Why don't you share where can people find Mobile Podcast Trailer?
So go ahead and in the description below, there will be links to Mobile Podcast Trailer. All the activity for booking right now is going to be on Instagram. Soon there will be a website where you'll be able to book Mobile Podcast Trailer. But as of right now, DM me on Instagram, Mobile Podcast Trailer. That's it. You'll see the logo, and it's there. I'm trying to post frequently on that page, and it's cool because I think I got like 60 followers, which awesome. in my eyes is halfway decent, and there's some people that I don't even know, which is cool.
Yeah.
And if you want, if you see me driving, scan the QR code, because the QR code takes you straight to mobilepodcasttrailer.com, which currently forwards to Instagram.
Beautiful. There you go.
Eventually there will be a calendar where you can just select and and do it. If you want to be a member or subscribe to Mobile Podcast Trailer as a service, DM me. We offer 4 podcasts a month at a minimum, and if you would like to book it by the hour, it's a 2-hour minimum, and we can discuss pricing if you're ready.
Beautiful.
Excellent. Hey, thanks for joining here on the Mobile Podcast Trailer. Matt Redder, thank you for testing this beast with me again.
It's awesome. Thanks for having me.
I love you, dude.
Oh, Drew.
You have fun. Have a good day.